villagers are all waiting, they're all excited. They always look forward to seeing Jordy. He's there, he connects with them. They appreciate him very much. The school that we were going to is at a town called a village called Weepon. And the government had come in and built a school there. They built it's a simple school. They spent a lot of money on it, but it's a simple school. When you have to fly all the supplies in, who was it? Somebody, I think it was yesterday, asked me if I'd been in any places where they didn't have any cars. They don't have any cars up there, let me put it that way, okay? It's up there, and your way of getting around, they don't have any bicycles. There's no motorcycles. You walk if you want to go somewhere. The river, the creek that runs between those two villages didn't look very, it wasn't a slow-flowing river, let's just say that. It was fairly tight. So the government built the school, and it's all good there. And the government had teachers in there. They were going to run it as a government school, but it wasn't very long, and the government teachers bailed. They basically said, they didn't say it per se, but basically their idea was, you don't pay us enough to be up here. And it was tough up there. The students that are up there, the teachers that are up there, it's not an easy job. They are working in a primitive situation. They cook their food over a fire. I mean, every meal that they want hot food, they start up the fire, put some wood in. The students, somebody asked me about tuition for the students. Well, they don't know much about money up there, but they do bring the teachers firewood on a regular basis, and so that helps keep them supplied. They bring them sweet potatoes when that time, when the harvest comes about. These villages have very little means of support of themselves, and the teachers up there make a huge difference because they're connecting with the kids, and these are Adventist young people, I would say 20 to 30 in that basic ballpark, and they're up there surviving. They're on their own until the plane comes in. And then they drop everything and go up and see what's going on, see what else is going on. When we got there were a bunch of kids there singing songs of welcome, and we appreciated that very much. It's about a half hour, 45-minute hike down to where the school is, up from the runway, but not too bad. So we spent the night there, had a good visit with the teachers, and next morning we got up and the pilot had already taken off. He'd wanted to do some flying before he got back and picked Gary and I up. So when the time came for him to come back, we heard him come back. But we could see there was no way he was going to land. It was all fogged in. And it was kind of patchy a little bit. He stayed around for a while, tried to get in, but he never did. And finally, we knew he wasn't coming back, and so we walked back to the village. And that was Friday. We spent Friday evening and Sabbath with the young people there. Had a great visit with them. It was cold. Oh. I mean, it wasn't cold like last night, don't get me wrong, temperature-wise. But when you're used to the tropics and you're dressed, you're used to the jungle and the humidity and heat, it was quite cool up there. Probably in the 50s, I don't know, maybe low 50s. And I had a small sleeping bag with me that I purchased down by where we'd flown in. But it wasn't really enough, but we survived. We made it, it was good. So teachers up there, we also have nurses up there, people that have trained as nurses, they know what they're doing. While we're there, this nurse was busy all the time taking care of things. She had one old man that had, between his big toe and his next toe, he had come down with a hoe or a shovel or something and cut the webbing there pretty seriously. Well, when you're walking barefoot through the dirt, it's hard to get that healed up. But she was doing her best to get that healed for him. And different people would come with different aches and different things, and she would do what she could to heal him. Now, I didn't sense there were any clinic hours there. They would just wander into the housing there, and somebody would call her, and she would come over and minister to their needs. We flew out of there, went to Vietnam. Amazing bustling country, busy country, crazy. We trained some workers there, had a good time there, and they invited Gary to preach the second weekend. Somebody did. And then somebody else said, better not. And we got to talking, and come to find out, when you speak there and you're a foreigner, you're supposed to submit your manuscript. It seemed like it was 6 months in advance, I don't know. And I don't know how many of you know preachers or are preachers, but trying to do anything 6 months in advance is pretty difficult. And not only that, but once the government approved it, they would have somebody in the audience reading it and checking out to be sure that you're not straying from what you said you were going to say. So needless to say, Gary decided not to preach. And obviously, if you disobey their orders, you can be assisted in leaving the country, let's just say, maybe never allowed back. So on April 4, while we were in Indonesia, we'd gotten we'd gotten an email. Gary had gotten an email from Gospel Outreach Headquarters, and they asked him to go check out Sunshine Orchard School. And we didn't know much about it, but we did a little investigation, and the time came to get there on April 4, and we flew into, we were a few days in Bangkok, and that's where I lost my cell phone. I left it on a taxi there. So I was, when you contacted me, I actually wasn't around, but my daughter answered your text because she'd got my new cell phone by then, so it's good. It's amazing what you do without a cell phone for a while. It's really not all bad, so maybe you should try it. So it's not all bad. So, so it was some 5 weeks after the Gospel Outreach contacted us, and we flew up to a little town called Mae Sot, little town, a border village with the border of Myanmar. And we got there and met, Lena Adams came and met us from the school. It's about a 2-hour drive back up there. We get up there, and this is a school right on the border of Thailand and Burma, or Myanmar as they call it now. And there's a lot of civil war going on in Myanmar. And many people have fled that area. Well, Paul and Lena, what a story, what a lady. If you know her, if you've heard of her, just an amazing lady. Gentle, kind, soft-hearted, would do anything for anybody, but also deeply committed to the kids that are entrusted to her and to the cause that she's put her mind to. She was married. She became an Adventist, a Christian. She's from Sweden. She became a Christian late in her 20s, early 20s, I think it was. Got married fairly soon to a non-believer. He didn't like, they had a couple girls fairly soon. He didn't like the little girls singing Sabbath school songs at home and became angry, and there was major tension in there, and finally he left the family. Sometime later, she found another good Christian man, got married, and he took in the kids and loved them, and they had a couple more. So now there were 3 girls, and their youngest was a son, and then he got brain cancer of some kind, and he passed away, despite the best care that she could give and everybody else could give. And she was kind of settled down to who she was. She was going to a small church there in Montana, but needless to say, the Lord has a way of working things out, doesn't he? And the Lord brought her another man, and he was a gentle man, a giant of a man, never been married, kind of too shy to ever get married, it seemed like. But Lena kind of attached her eye to him and began to draw him in, and pretty soon they got married. Well, they didn't want their kids to just grow up with the American experience. And so they said, well, why don't we do something different? And so they decided we're going to take a mission trip, and spend about a year overseas. They raised a bunch of money, got everything in order, and they were planning to go to India. They had everything, they had their ducks in a row, it was looking good, and they were just ready to go when suddenly they found out they maybe needed to get some health training. And so they went and got some training in simple remedies, things like that. And then they began to get word that this place in India was maybe not the best place for them. And they kind of backed off of that, and somebody presented them the opportunity to go to Thailand. And they said, well, why not? And they began to look into it and got to Thailand, and they went up and stayed at a school there, and they weren't there very long, and their oldest daughter, got a job over on Myanmar side, teaching at a school there, and she hadn't been there very long, and I don't have the story quite straight, but basically she'd been there a short time, and they get this call, well, we've been ordered to evacuate, but I think it'll be okay. The bombs aren't very close right now. And so she stayed there that night, and I think it was the next night she called again and said, hey, they're getting really close. We need to get out of here. And so Dad started up the old pickup, drove down to the river, made many trips back and forth to the river. There were little ferry boats that would take you across, just hauling people back up to the Thailand side. And they had a little bit of civilization there. And it wasn't very long, and they had a school going, and a variety of other things, orphanage, a lot of things going to just make it work for everybody there. Now, when we were there, Paul wasn't there. He was in the States on a trip, so we just heard her side of the story. But her three daughters came to her at one point. She had adopted I don't know how many kids into her home and had raised little ones from the get-go. And her girls came to her and says, Mom, you're getting older now, you know, we have enough kids, you're busy, you've got enough on your hands, no more kids. And they kept pestering her, basically made her promise she wouldn't take any more babies into the home. And she wasn't real comfortable with that because she wants to be open to what the Lord has in mind. But she's also willing to listen to her girls, so she kind of agrees with them, and that's okay. And it wasn't too long later, she's in town, and she gets this phone call from Paul saying, can you pick up some newborn diapers? You see, he hadn't made any promises. So what can anybody say? When we were there, Gary and I spent 2 days, or 1 day there, I guess, just 2 nights there. And there were 28 kids living in that home.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
28 kids. Now, they're not all hers, and they weren't all permanent, I don't think. Some of them are just moving through. Some of them are going to school, living there till they could find another place to live. You know, there was all kinds of situations. But that home is a well-ordered home. The kids take care of it. The kids cook the meals, and they're pretty good cooks from what I would say, what I saw. And it's an amazing place. Their school had somewhere around 360 kids this last year.
Wow.
It's a big school.
Yes.
They just started recently, and they have about 600 kids. That's a 69% increase because the needs are so great. And Gospel Outreach had asked us to come check it out to see if there was a way we could work together with them or if there were some things we can do. So we're planning to help them out, but the challenge is the challenge there is that their fundraising, the way they've been raising money, is kind of drying up, and they're struggling there. For years, they've been working with a small nonprofit organization. They've also taken money in from family members on a somewhat regular basis. There's various churches that give them money, maybe take an offering once a year for them or other things. But they're really struggling, and their budget is around $13,000 US per month now, this next year. So anyway, we're looking forward to helping them and being of some service to them. It's an amazing place. Their youngest daughter, Anna, is married to a local from the Karen tribe there, and he's the principal of the school, and she's the accountant, and she's the registrar, and kind of the business operator of the whole operation there. She takes care of things in an amazing way, and she makes it happen. She also makes sure they don't get too many kids there, and she has to decide who's going to come and who can't come. So it's a long story. But what a lady, what a lady. People that, you know, you've heard stories about people that do more and more with less and less until pretty soon they can do anything with nothing. Well, that's about what they're accomplishing there. It's an amazing story.
What's the name of that school?
Sunshine Orchards School. Sunshine Orchards. You can ask me later. I'll tell you later about that later. So we went from, we flew out of Mesop Friday morning. Lena took us down there, and we flew back to Bangkok. And she had told us about her son-in-law, because she has a daughter and son-in-law that live there in Bangkok. Well, the daughter wasn't there and the kids weren't there, but Jordan was there. Jordan Kennedy is his name. And we met with him, and he's very ministry-minded as well, and he's right next door to, I think, the largest university in Thailand. And he's got a climbing wall. He has a climbing wall. It's beautifully decorated, just gorgeous. And he invites young people from the university to come over and climb on his wall. Now, theoretically, he charges them, but he does so many things on a regular basis for free that I'm not sure how much business he keeps going. And he wants to start a center of influence there where God can make a difference through him and his work there. From Thailand, we flew to Cambodia. Cambodia is a fascinating place. Gary and I spent a couple of days at Angkor Wat and had just a great time there. Horribly hot place and lots of hiking. And the first day I didn't take near enough water, but as you can see, we survived. So it's amazing. So we had a good time there. So it was very good. And we met Seha there. He was our tour guide, an Adventist young man that lives there and also pastors the church there. Had a great visit with him, and I'll get to his story a little bit later. But let me tell you a little bit more about Gary's story. So Gary was in Korea teaching English, and they asked him to go to Cambodia, and he finally said yes. He got to Cambodia and met a few people, and then the teachers came and they started school. Well, what did Gary know about teaching English? He knew one thing: the Korean way, right? And that was you have 7 weeks terms, and then you do an evangelistic series. It's 7 weeks and another evangelistic series. It's just what he learned. And that's what he began to do when he got to Cambodia. And people came. And his very first Bible class there, the Bible classes, they would offer Bible for the students if they wanted to come learn the Bible. And they were a little bit cheaper than the English classes. And so his first Bible class, he's got a number of Buddhist monks. I'm thinking there were 7 of them. I don't remember. And the Buddhist monks are having a good time, and he's having a good time teaching them stories about Jesus and the Bible stories. And it's all going good. And down toward the end of the quarter, they start laughing. And he looks at them and says, well, what's so funny? And they said, ha ha ha, we tricked you. And he says, well, how did you trick me? And he says, oh, you thought we were here to learn about the Bible. We don't care about the Bible, but we were here to learn English. And Gary thinks about that a minute, and he says, but we tricked you. And they said, what? We know you didn't want to learn about it. We know you weren't interested in the Bible, but we knew that you would come to learn English, and yet we were able to teach you stories from the Bible. And from that first Bible class that Gary had, they baptized a young man, a Buddhist monk who became an Adventist. And it wasn't very long, and the bombs were falling, and they were evacuated from Cambodia a number of times, and Gary stayed in Phnom Penh there several times when they were coming, but eventually his time came to leave, and he needed to leave. And one of the times when he was evacuated, he tells about leaving, and he knew that the Khmer Rouge was coming in, and so he went to the school and just burned piece by piece every piece of paper for every student that had been to the school, because anybody associated with that school would be at risk from the Khmer Rouge. Cambodia was a amazing place. I've never been anywhere in my life where there's so much hurting. There's people my children's age that have seen death and dying. People born in refugee camps. People travel from one refugee camp to the other, and on the side they see people dead on the side of the road. It's an awful place. There's people there. We talked to a lady at one church we were at, and I'm sorry, my stories are kind of scattered because, well, many reasons. I got back Sunday night, okay? June 11th, Sunday night. I came in, it was close to, I got to bed about midnight that night, and I'm struggling to get everything. Then I get here and come to find out I had packed everything at home before I left yesterday it was, yeah. And I had one bag that looked like it was maybe an extra bag, so I took the things out of that bag, the clothes out, and put them in other bags, and it all worked. But then I get here and I realized I'd also put my charger cords in that bag, and I left it home. So my computer's not working anymore. After a cold night, it's dead in the water. So, and I had some good notes on there and stuff, but it all works. So now I lost my train of thought. So we're there, and there's people. We talked to a lady, and she's whatever, and she had a wooden leg, a plastic leg, and she had been walking near her house, about 500 yards from her house, and stepped on a landmine. Other Adventist workers were part of the Khmer Rouge. Now they're, it's just a variety of people. People with wooden legs, people struggling in various ways. We had a great gospel Bible worker training there, had a good time, just a really good time there. And Gary had gone to Cambodia last year. Gary, I didn't tell you about the part where Gary came into the gospel outreach work. He'd heard about gospel outreach in probably 2019. He went to Redwood Camp meeting. There was a booth set up there, learned a little bit about them, and somewhere in there he indicated some interest to them. They invited him to their main meeting in the 1st of October. He came to that, and in 2020 he was assigned as the gospel outreach regional director for that area in training. And so they sent him, he flew to, I think it was Vietnam, and he flew in maybe February of 2020. And what was going on in February 2020? COVID. Yeah, it was just coming in. He got there, got off the plane, everything was good. The guy with gospel outreach that had been the coordinator for gospel outreach in that area flew in a short time later, and he couldn't get off his plane. They sent him back. And so Gary's here trying to figure out what gospel outreach is about. He is new to the organization, but he did his best, made things work, and got her done there. So he's there in 2021. He didn't go. 2022, he was back there a year ago, and he's showing slides at the Bible worker training of the early church, of the church in Cambodia, because the people in Cambodia don't have a good idea of the church. And he was there at the very beginning of this era of the church and had a lot of pictures of it. And he showed one picture up there of a baptism that he had been at. And one of the people in that room, in fact, the executive secretary of the conference said, "I'm in that picture, that's me." And he went up and pointed out where he was. And the executive secretary, now he's the president of the conference in Cambodia, was baptized in a refugee camp. Now, the refugee camp where he was baptized is the Buddhist monk that Gary had made friends with, and they had baptized there as the Buddhist monk guy. His name was Lam Samet. And he had gone on, and things had gotten separated, but he and his family were in Cambodia, and they heard that there were, and anyway, they came across the border, and they got across the border on the Thailand side, and they saw Seventh-day Adventist Relief or Welfare Services, the SAWS, the old precursor to ADRA, and he got there and found a truck that had the emblem on there, and he asked them, "Oh, do you guys know Gary Wagner?" And they said, "Oh, he's our director." Because he had gone back to that part of the world. He'd gone back to Thailand as the director for ADRA, or for SAWS at that time. And Gary found this guy, and he told him, "What I need you to do is I need you to go back across into Cambodia and go upriver about 15 miles and then cross over. And there's a church that's been built there by a missionary, but there's no pastor." Well, Lam Samet was a Buddhist, okay, but he'd become an Adventist, been an Adventist for a fairly short time, and he gets across and he sees the needs there, and he started the church up. Well, what do you think he did to start a church up? How do you start churches? What did he know? He taught English, so he started teaching English classes. And he started teaching English classes. What do you do every 7 weeks? You have an evangelistic series, right? Well, pretty soon he's doing the same model because that's what he knows, and it's working well. Well, Pastor Hongdara, who wasn't a pastor then, he's a Buddhist. He's living in Cambodia with his wife, but things are not real good there. And he hears about someplace, there's a refugee camp over in Thailand where I can learn some English. And so he'd heard about that in the middle of the country, and he traveled carefully, very cautiously, got over there, got to the refugee camp, and began to learn English there from Lam Samet. And pretty soon, he was baptized there. And now he's the leader of the church in Cambodia. It's amazing. God works in amazing ways. We never know. And when we do what we can do, what we're capable of doing, when we do what we know, God doesn't ask us to do things we don't know. God doesn't ask us to do things that we're incapable of. But when we do what we can do, when we take what we've got, what is it? The Lord said to Moses, "What is that in your hand?" It's what's in our hand that's important, to do with what we've got, with what we have. So we get to Cambodia, and the pastor there that was, they call him the field secretary. He's a young man, has a church in the district in northern Cambodia, and he was our main driver there. And he took us, we traveled a lot in Cambodia. Number of different Bible workers to see them, just different things. And it was enjoyable, and it was also very encouraging to see what was going on in the work there. And he is a gentle-hearted man. And you look at him and you wouldn't think there's a mean bone in his body. And for all I know, there isn't. But he grew up, you think he grew up in a perfect situation. No, Born in a refugee camp. No? Yeah, I don't remember if he was born in a refugee camp, and I don't have my notes right here. So, anyway, he was born, and as he was a kid, the war was going on all the time, all around him, and his dad started. His mom was working a business, trying to make a living, trying to make things go. She would get money from local people, kind of put it in a community fund, and then they would loan money out to whoever needed it the worst in the group. Well, pretty soon she kind of became a bit of a loan shark. It was doing okay, bringing a little bit of money in that way. And Dad had another kind of a job. He found that if he traveled into Thailand illegally and bought some ammunition and guns there, he could bring them back across the border and make a tremendous profit. And he made really good money at that, and they were doing quite well as a family. And they were doing so well, in fact, that he decided to get into automobiles and motorcycles. And pretty soon, Dad is going into Thailand, getting cars and motorcycles, bringing them into Cambodia and selling them at a nice profit, and doing quite well at that. The automobiles weren't always, the owner didn't always give them up voluntarily, I guess, and sometimes it took some encouragement. And they said, Johann said, sometimes the cars had blood on the inside of them and things like that. So, yeah, this is what you see there. This is what's there. Anyway, Dad is working and they're making really good money. But sometimes he would go and he would give them the money, and then they would never show up with the vehicle. And it happened too many times. So Dad started borrowing money from the people around him that had some money. And pretty soon, that kind of dried up. And then one of Johann's brothers passed away. And then his mom passed away. And Dad's business just went kaput. Well, Johann, I think, was 13 or 14 at the time. And so one of the creditors there, Dad told Johann and his brother that they would need to go work with this lady, the farmer. And so they went and worked on her farm. But she took them quite a ways away into a remote area where they were far removed from anybody else, and gave them a big rice field, a big rice farm, where they were to do all the work. And there were a few other people there at the beginning, but in the end, they were doing it all. Now, it was hard work. She would come about every 2 weeks or something. Somebody would come and bring them some supplies, some food, rice and beans and pork and a few things. But they didn't have a lot to eat. And he told how sometimes they would go out and find snakes and mice and lizards and frogs and whatever else they could find to add to their diet. That young man's about the age of my girls, and that's just, it's hard to believe, but he's got a soft heart. And he was a Buddhist, and got through that experience, and somewhere along the way, about that time, he met he was staying at a church, an Adventist church, and got acquainted with Adventism somehow. But the leader of the church whose house he was staying at took him to a monastery in Thailand where he could become a monk. And so he went there, and he's got stories about his monk training. And he did pretty good. And anyway, lots of interesting stories. But God took him and used him, prepared him to work for God. And the Lord is using him still today. It's amazing what God is doing with him as he's working there. So gospel outreach has a variety of ways of reaching people. And like I said, the focus of gospel outreach is is Bible workers in unreached areas where there's unreached people out there. Money you give to gospel outreach is used for that purpose. Well over 90% of it goes to that cause. It's not used to pay for the heating of the headquarters building. It's not used for anything else. That's what it's used for. If you'd like to sponsor an individual, about $150 a month, we'll give you an individual, and they'll put you in connection with somebody after somebody is chosen. You can do that. If you'd like to do that as a class, that's fine. Or as a church, that's fine. They're always looking for ambassadors, people at a local church that will kind of keep the gospel outreach cause in front of the church. We can talk about that if you'd like. I've got a little booth set up over in the foyer of the church that I'll get up and running sometime. I've got some great videos and stuff that Gospel Outreach gave me. If somebody has an extra laptop, no, I can't get it off my laptop. No, I've got an Asus computer. That's what I need, is a charge cord for that. So anyway, we'll see. We may not get anything off of there. Or you can volunteer. They're always looking for volunteers of different kinds. When I volunteered for them, I didn't know what I would get. They said they had basically two kinds of volunteers: the volunteers that work in the office, and the volunteers that work in the field. Well, we got to talking, and I had spent enough time in Hong Kong and Japan and other places that I realized I would rather work in the field. And anyway, it's interesting, and I don't know what they've got planned for me down the road. They haven't told me where they're going to assign me as a regional director, but I assume. I don't think Gary and I will be taking any more trips together. Let's just put it that way. And actually, Gary said he wanted to take his wife on the trip next year. On the trip with him instead of me. And I'm not sure why, but somebody somewhere was asking if his wife was going to come next year. And I said, well, if they assign me as a regional director here, I'll ask his wife if she wants to come with me, and maybe. But I don't think that'll happen either. So. India, they have over 1,200 workers. Right now, there's somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 gospel outreach workers around the world. I don't have the exact number here. 130 some in the Philippines, China, Azerbaijan, Iran, Turkey, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. There's deaf workers in Africa, Nepal, we've got some 58 there, Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia. Lots of workers going on around the world. Several things I learned on this trip. Many, many things. One thing I learned is that things can change very quickly. And when it comes to our world, our economy, things can change very quickly. You think we're advanced here in this country, we always think we're way ahead of the world. In Cambodia, you don't need money. You go to the restaurant and eat, then they bring you, and I don't know the name of that, what's that little square thing with the squigglies in it? You know what I mean?
It's a square.
Yeah, it's a code anyway. And you take a picture of it or something, and it does something for you. You can go to a website or whatever. Well, there, you take a picture of that, and it transfers money from your account to the restaurant's account. When the restaurant gets the money, they'll give you the receipt, and you're good to go. Just as simple as can be. It's very nice. And I'm sure we'll get there fairly soon in this country. We're a little behind the times when that happens. So things can change very, very quickly.
Is it hard for you to, is it hard to get into Iran and Afghanistan and those places where there's war going on and they're Muslim Muslim?
Yes, it's hard. It may not be hard to get in, like Indonesia is the largest Muslim country, and it's easy to get in. But if you do something they don't appreciate or don't approve of, we have a gospel outreach regional director recently, I'm talking about the last few months, that was kind of escorted out of the country or out of the area because they were proselytizing in the marketplace or somewhere where their approach wasn't appreciated. So yeah, it can be hard. It can be difficult. And much of the 1040 window is very difficult to get into for a Westerner because many of them are Muslim countries, Hindu countries, and they may be fairly resistant to any kind of change. And people always ask me about change. Like the people up in the mountains, the villagers up there. Why change them? Why not just leave them alone? Oh, my friends, the gospel is so liberating. It is so powerful. And the freedom it gives us, we forget that it makes a difference. It makes a difference in how we live. And if you think it's okay just to leave them in darkness, something's missing in your Christianity because I've got other stories we could tell there, but it's our gospel, it changes people. And no, we never force people. But the gospel is a freeing message, a liberating message, and it just brings hope and courage. And when you see people changed from their animism or from their fear of the spirits and their fear of everything else and realize that there's freedom in Jesus, it makes a big difference. Change can happen very, very quickly. I was jogging early last week. Maybe, I don't remember exactly what day, Monday or Tuesday last week. We'd flown into Jakarta for one last trip there, one last trying to make, we had another flight to catch there. But you get to a hotel, and you're not sure what you're getting. And this was in kind of a seedier part of town. We were told never to go there again. That's not a good health. It's not a safe place. Well, it was fine. The price was about right. And But I wanted to go jogging that morning, so you get up early, and the street beside our hotel, or in front of our right next to our hotel, was a busy street. It was 2-lane, both going one way, but you can at any time you can have motorcycles going the other way. So you always have to look every way before you cross any road. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:15. I got up and went out, and it's noisy, and I don't know where I'm going to go jogging. I don't want to get lost. I do have the card for the hotel in my pocket, okay? So I can show somebody, and hopefully somebody can help me get there. Although it was in another town, I showed the name of the hotel, and he sent me this way. I didn't think that was right. So pretty soon I found a nice hotel and asked them, and I was just very close. So, but that helps. But I didn't want to get lost. So I'm staying right along this road, and there's busy cars even early in the morning, and noisy, and just noisy as all get out. And all of a sudden I came around a corner, and here was a brand new development. And I go in the development, and there's no traffic. And the birds are singing, and it's peaceful. Things can change very, very quickly. It doesn't take much. We sometimes forget that God can change things very quickly. Very, very quickly. Confucius said many, many things, I know. One of the things we're told that he said is, you have sails and you cling to the anchor. Ooh, what an indictment. Don't let that be said of us. Let me tell you just a little bit more about Seha, our guide in Cambodia at Angkor Wat. He was born in a refugee camp. He's a young man, I'd say about 35 years old now. Born in a refugee camp, strong Buddhist family. His dad was in the military. His grandfather, his dad's father, was a witch doctor. And Seha's dad had been given special powers. He'd been given immunity to bullets. And being in the military, that's a nice thing to have. And it didn't take very long, and his men realized they could trust him. They could count on him. That he would, they're marching along in order, and he said stop, they stop. And when he said go, they moved forward, and they learned to trust him. And life was going good, and he was moving ahead in the military. And then he got malaria. And he got sick, and pretty soon he went home, and his family was in a refugee camp somewhere, but he didn't know exactly where, so he had to look for them. Finally, he found them, and they did what they could for him, but he was getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And finally, his mother, Seha's mom, picked him up. He was literally just skin and bones, and took him to the hospital. Now, the hospital she took him to was a refugee hospital there in Thailand, run by Adventists. And he got there, and they gave him the medicine he needed, but they also started to pray for him. And he became acquainted with the Bible. And he started to take Bible studies. And what's the first Bible study you take when you take Bible studies often? But it's about the Creator God. And he got to thinking, how can I have immunity to bullets and a little mosquito bite is going to kill me? And he's thinking about it. He says, I want to know the God of the mosquito. I want to know who created that mosquito. And he studied, and he began to realize this God is a good God and a loving God. And he began to study, and he was so excited. And he learned more, and he got stronger and stronger, and pretty soon he went home. And needless to say, God hadn't been working on his wife's heart, or at least she hadn't responded very much. And she wanted nothing to do with this foreign religion in her home. And so she's there, and she doesn't appreciate what he has to say at all about the Bible, so he kind of keeps it to himself. But one Sabbath he went to church, and at church, has a good time at church, and he's there, and he comes home, finds his wife. She's out doing what she had to do before every meal, and then he's go out and chop the wood and split the wood and get ready for the meal, and he wasn't there to help her. And she asked him, where have you been? And he said, I went to church. And she was livid. She was so angry with him. She pulled up her axe and was going to bring it over his skull. And he just stood there. He didn't try to protect himself. He didn't try to run. He just stood there. He didn't get angry with her. And somehow she was able to divert that blow from cracking his skull, and it flew by and hit the aluminum water tank they had sitting on the chair there, and made a big cut in the water tank. Now, in Cambodia, men of the world there are very promiscuous, let's just say. They appreciate their wife, they want her there, she's there to take care of things and be home. But they feel free to do whatever they want on the side. And yet, that all changed. They also tend to be abusive, and he was very much an alcoholic. But as God got a hold of his heart, he changed. And his wife began to observe him the next week, and she saw the change in him. And the next Sabbath, she went to church with him. And God reached into that family and changed them, worked in them in amazing ways. God, so Seha tells the story, and he says he had asked his mother about that. There was a weld in the aluminum water tank, and he asked his mom how that, what happened to make a break there, that they needed to weld it. And at that time, his mom was, anyway, she told him, oh, it fell on the floor and it got a cut in it. And he's thinking, he's not a big kid, but he can think through, and it's not a concrete floor, it's just a dirt floor. And the chair is not that high. And, that tank falling on the floor, the dirt floor, is not going to get a gash like that. But he didn't say anything. And then one week at church, he heard his mom give her testimony about swinging the axe at her husband. And that family was changed.
Amen.
And friends, if God can use one little mosquito to change one man's life, to change the family's life, he's doing things all the time to reach into our hearts and to change us.
Amen.
Can we say yes to him and let him do his work? Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your power and your wisdom in reaching into people's lives and touching them and convicting them and bringing them to a trusting relationship with you. Give us wisdom, Lord. Give us wisdom as we reach out and as we connect with people and as we try to see how we can best use our funds for your glory. Just work in our hearts and our lives and our minds. Thank you for your goodness, Lord. Just bless us as we're here. Continue to feed us with your word, and we thank you for your love. In Jesus' name.